When players move to new clubs, it's their dream to make a perfect start on the pitch, but that hasn't always been the case. Number 5. Xiao Felix first broke into the scene with Atletico Madrid, and we all thought he was going to be the next big thing from Portugal. Another Ronaldo perhaps. And while that's still a possibility, his excellent performances for the red and white side of Madrid attracted interest from the big clubs around Europe. Now, as far as the 2022-23 season was concerned, no club needed Felix's service like the way Chelsea did. The London club was in shambles, as a new owner had taken over and the team was left in low confidence. They could barely score a goal, let alone win a match. But then came Felix on a loan deal, and he had just one job to do, which was to score and create the goals that would take the Blues back to the top half of the table. And I'm sure that's exactly what he wanted to do, which is why he looked pretty deadly in his debut against Fulham. The Portuguese youngster was so enthusiastic that he was running across every blade of grass in search of a goal. But his enthusiasm would cost him greatly, as he was shown a straight red card for a horrific tackle. And just like that, Felix's day was over. The dream debut had turned into a nightmare, which would be followed up with a 3-match ban. You know what that meant, right? That's a few £1 million worth of loan fee down the drain. Number 4. Now, you can forgive Felix for his terrible debut, since he was just a youngster who was still learning the ropes. As for his Atletico teammate Anto Griezmann, well, let's just say he could have done better. The French striker was tipped to return to Wanda Metropolitano after a not-so-impressive spell at Barcelona. And after all the back and forth, the deal eventually pulled through on deadline day. Griezmann would return on a season-long loan with an obligation to buy for £34 million. That's a lot of money to be placed on a 30-year-old's head, which only goes to show how good a striker he was. True to this, his first spell at Atletico saw him score a whopping 133 goals and deliver 50 assists in 257 matches. Unfortunately, it seemed his 2-year absence from the Spanish capital had taken the Atletico spirit away from him. His second debut for the club was against Espanyol, and my word, it was terrible. Griezmann struggled to do anything meaningful with the ball. His touches were poor, and he just couldn't get into the game. For the Espanyol defenders, dispossessing Griezmann was as easy as taking candy from a baby. And no disrespect to them, but they weren't even among the best defenders in the league. What made things worse is that at that stage of the season, Espanyol hadn't won a single game, but Griezmann's poor showing gave them the confidence to dominate the match and even take the lead in the 40th minute. The Frenchman's only 2 goal attempts were weak and wide, and by the 60th minute, coach Diego Simon had seen enough. Off came Griezmann, and guess who he was replaced with? It was Xiao Felix. The Portuguese wonder kid changed the entire complexion of the game as soon as he stepped onto the pitch. His passes were sharp and accurate, and he pulled the strings that made Atletico's attack bite harder. And as Felix was working all his magic, a disappointed Griezmann could only watch from the bench in shame. Griezmann's woeful return was summed up when the player statistics were released after the match. Xiao Felix had played fewer minutes than Griezmann, but had far more touches in the opposition box than the French striker. Number 3. But let's not be too hard on Griezmann, as players can experience a dip in form no matter how good they are. As for Gervinho, well, he only had himself to blame for making a mess of his Arsenal debut. The Ivorian striker made all the headlines after signing for the Gunners in 2011, and he was tipped to be the next Ian Wright. To his credit, he showed flashes of that possibility in a friendly match against FC Cologne after Arsene Wenger thought it was time to unleash his new weapon. The speedy striker scored 2 goals in the first 15 minutes of the match, and I'm sure Wenger was more than impressed. Fast forward a few weeks later, and the new season had kicked off. It was time for some serious business, and as potential title winners, Arsenal could not afford to drop unnecessary points. Wenger knew this more than anyone, which is why Gervinho was his go-to striker in their first match against Newcastle. But someone should have warned the Ivorian about a certain Newcastle player named Joey Barton. Well, no one did, and after showing some flashes of good things to come, the new man got into an entanglement with the notorious Barton. As we all know, Barton isn't one to back out of a fight. He's also an expert in getting other players to lose their tempers, and Gervinho was going to be his next victim. Barton provoked Arsenal's new signee so badly that he raised his hand in a violent manner. Of course, the referee wasn't going to let that slide, which is why he showed Gervinho a straight red card for violent conduct. It was mission accomplished for Joey Barton and an early shower for an angry and disappointed Gervinho. Number 2. But if you thought Gervinho's debut was bad, wait until you hear about Jonathan Woodgate's horrible and embarrassing first match for Real Madrid. I mean, this man literally redefined what it meant to have a horrific day on the pitch, so much that you could write a book about it. Not to say Woodgate was a terrible player, far from it, as he was one of the best defenders in Europe at the time. Why else would Real Madrid sign him for as high as £13.4 million? Sadly though, he was dealing with recurring injuries which didn't allow him to start the season with the rest of the Los Blancos. But after missing over a month worth of action, Woodgate was finally fit and ready to make his debut for the Spanish Giants. Now I'm sure you know they say something is worth the wait. Well, Woodgate's debut wasn't. On this very sad day, Real Madrid were up against Athletic Bilbao and the expectations were high for their new signee. Now, being a defender, Woodgate wasn't signed to score goals, but no one knew he had such finishing ability until he scored a brilliant diving header in the 24th minute. The only problem with the goal was that he smacked the ball right into his own net. How horrific it must have been for Woodgate to start his Real Madrid career with an own goal. Pretty horrific, as this blunder haunted him throughout the rest of the game. He just wasn't himself anymore, as he kept on making silly defensive errors and committing all sorts of fouls. But it was his tackle in the 66th minute of the game that would sum up his day. Woodgate was shown a second yellow, and that was it. No heroics, no reason to cheer, just one own goal and a red card. Now you would think that Woodgate would rise above his disappointing first day and play better in subsequent matches. Sadly, he didn't, which prompted Spanish newspaper Marca to label him the worst signing of the 21st century. Number 1. One guy who is far from being the worst is Lionel Messi. He's actually the best at what he does, and there's no team in the world that wouldn't be honoured to have him wear their jersey. After rising through the ranks at Barcelona, he went on to represent Argentina at the World Youth Championship in 2005, and the little genius was brilliant all through the tournament. He was also instrumental in the final against Nigeria, and his brilliance helped his team beat the Africans to lift the trophy. But Messi's quality was just too good for the youth team, which is why he received a call-up to the senior team in the same year. Now I'm sure the young lad would have hoped to score a hat-trick on his debut against Hungary, and maybe he would have if he stayed on the pitch long enough. The then 18-year-old Messi must have had goosebumps as he came on as a substitute, but they would quickly disappear as he was shown a straight red card exactly 40 seconds after entering the game. His offence was elbowing defender Vilmos Van Sack, who he felt was marking him too close for comfort. Messi reflected on this incident years later, and he admitted that things didn't go the way he dreamed it would. It's all good though, because as we all know, Messi has been the backbone of Argentina's recent successes, including winning the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. So guys, are there any other terrible debuts you know of? Tell us about them in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel, because there's more awesome football content where this came from. See you in the next one.